26th November 1930. A chilling headline appeared on the front page of the Maiden Daily Journal in Canada. The title read, "Village of the Dead," and it sent shockwaves across the nation. A remote Inuit tribe in northern Canada had mysteriously vanished overnight, without a single trace. Welcome to Echo Mysteries, where we uncover the most baffling and unsolved cases from history. A remote settlement in the wilderness. Deep in the isolated regions of northern Canada lies Anjikuni Lake, a place known for its extreme weather and sparse population. This region, though breathtaking in its icy beauty, is one of the most unforgiving terrains on Earth. It is a land where survival depends on skill, knowledge, and a deep connection with nature. Along its shores, a small Inuit Eskimo settlement once thrived. This tribe, consisting of around 100 to 150 people, lived in harmony with the land, surviving through fishing in the lake and hunting in the surrounding wilderness. They were a resilient people, accustomed to the harsh winters and the ever-present dangers of the wild. The region spans thousands of square kilometers, yet it is inhabited by only a few thousand people due to its brutal climate. The Inuit of Anjikuni Lake were among those who had chosen to settle in this remote landscape, relying on their time-honored traditions to endure the frigid conditions. Hunters and fur trappers frequently traveled to this area, and one such man was Joe LaBelle, an experienced trapper who had been venturing into these frozen lands for years. The arrival of Joe LaBelle was a freezing November night in 1930, when Joe LaBelle set out on a hunting expedition. Armed with his rifle, he ventured deep into the wilderness, following the tracks of his prey. As the hours passed and darkness began to set in, Joe decided to spend the night at a familiar place, the Inuit village near Anjikuni Lake. He had been welcomed there before, and he knew the villagers to be warm and hospitable. The thought of a warm fire and fresh food after a long day of trekking through the snow was comforting. But as he approached the settlement, an uneasy feeling crept over him. The night was still, too still. No voices, no movement. Only the sound of the wind whispering through the trees and the crunch of snow beneath his boots. Something was wrong. The village dogs, which would usually bark at the arrival of a stranger, were eerily silent. Even before he stepped foot in the village, Joe sensed that something was terribly amiss. The Ghost Village. As Joe stepped closer, he noticed something deeply unsettling. Chimneys still had smoke rising from them, as if fires had been lit recently. The homes stood untouched, but where were the people? Joe entered the first home. Empty. He checked another, also empty. His heart pounded as he moved from one dwelling to the next, calling out for the villagers. Not a single soul responded. Inside some homes, meals were left half-cooked on the stove, now burnt to ash. The beds were unmade, as if someone had just risen from them moments before disappearing. Clothes and personal belongings were still in place. Even more disturbing, a fresh pot of stew sat over a fire, its contents overcooked but still edible, as if someone had planned to return at any moment. Near the edge of the village, Joe made a chilling discovery. The dogs, loyal sled companions essential for survival in these harsh lands, were still tied to their posts. but they were dead. Not from violence, not from attack. They had starved to death. Nearby, food remained untouched, in storage. But perhaps the most horrifying sight of all was a freshly dug grave in the snow, with no body inside. Something had happened here, something unnatural. Calling for help, Joe Lebel, now gripped with fear, wasted no time. He fled the abandoned village and trekked through the freezing wilderness until he reached the nearest telegraph office. There, he sent an urgent message to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, detailing what he had found. When authorities arrived at Anjikuni Lake, they were met with an eerie sight. Everything was exactly as Joe had described it, but there was no sign of the villagers. Not a single track in the snow, no indication of a struggle, no looted belongings. The RCMP initially suspected a mass murder or a violent attack. But as they examined the site, their theories began to crumble. If there had been an enemy attack, where were the bodies? If the villagers had fled, where were their footprints? The lake was completely frozen.